Welcome to the Viking Age podcast, the official podcast of the vikingage.com. My name is Schad. I write for Zone Coverage, I write for the Viking Age, as well as Zone Coverage, Bring Me the News, and the Brookings Register. We do this every Monday and Thursday right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel and on Apple and Spotify every Tuesday and Friday. And sometimes I will go online at noon on Fridays to talk to our new guest. But what we have going on today, like I said, live guest. Let's just restart this here. The magic of live YouTube. However you consume us, rate, comment, like, and subscribe so you never miss a new episode, whether it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I don't even know right now. But we have a guest today that agreed to go live. He is one of the hosts of the Vikings Happy Hour and on the Climbing the Pocket YouTube channel. Climb the Pocket YouTube channel. This is a disaster of an open, so I apologize for that. But he is a writer for Vikings Wire and the Daily Norseman, and apparently he's a glutton for punishment because he saw the show and said, I want to do that. So his name is Matt Anderson. Matt, my apologies for the messy intro there. That's just kind of how my life has been this week. How you doing, man? Welcome to the Viking Age.
I'm doing well, and it's all good, man. Trust me, I've done plenty of live shows and know that when you put that live button on, for some reason, it's way different than just a normal recording. So you hit all the important parts, and that's all that matters.
That's what people don't realize. Like when they tune in live to like see us, like they just see like two idiots on YouTube talking back and forth.
Yeah.
But it is harder as soon as that button goes on. You're just like, oh my God, don't do anything stupid, and then you do something stupid anyway. Which,
yes,
just kind of mentions it. So let's dive right into the show today. The first topic of the day is that the Vikings hosted a joint practice with the Tennessee Titans. The Vikings kindly asked people not to film, and then everybody took out their phones because that's what society does anyway. So it helped people like myself, who is in the middle of South Dakota, and yourself, who didn't go to practice but kind of just followed online, to really get a sense of what's going on. So I'll ask you here to start off, what is your biggest takeaway after these practices this week?
Man, biggest takeaway for me probably is, I think just the wide receiver depth. I've talked about it on my show a bunch, but when we talk about Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, I know Addison didn't practice this week, but N'Keal Harry played well through a couple of the training camp practices that we heard about. Tristan Jackson came back and was playing well. Brandon Powell has been playing well. And so I think really one of my biggest takeaways is just that group. That group is going to be a very tough decision when it comes down to cut down day on which direction you're going to go. And I think a huge testament is to Keenan McCardell. I think his coaching, his development with some of these guys is a big reason that they are as successful as they are. So that's one of my big takeaways for sure.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was sitting here this morning and I'm like, man, this Jalen Nailor injury is pretty like concerning. Like he hasn't practiced after getting hurt in the first practice training camp. And I was like, maybe they need to sign a receiver. But as you mentioned, there's just a lot of guys here that can step in and play. We saw Brandon Powell. He's looked good during training camp at times. There's also Tristan Jackson, who avoided that leg injury, and he's making plays now. I mean, even a guy like Jalen Reagor, who I know doesn't have the best mental capacity at times to execute the playbook, but he's also a physical freak. Like he can get the job done on a physical level. It's just kind of putting everything together. All of those guys give the Vikings a variety of weapons where, let's say Jordan Addison, who left, or I don't think he actually made it to the Titans practice. He actually left practice, I think, on Wednesday and was entered the concussion protocol.
Yeah.
Like, if a guy like that goes down, you have other guys that can step up, like KJ Osborne can fit in that role. Jalen Nailor can fit in that role. Like it's really deep at receiver. And I think it means good things for the Vikings offense this year.
Absolutely. I mean, the offense has unlimited potential when you think about it with the weapons and the arsenal that Kirk Cousins has at his disposal. I mean, we talk about TJ Hawkinson, who obviously hasn't practiced, and whether you buy into the conspiracy that he actually has an ear infection or he's sort of holding in whatever, but behind him, Josh Oliver, right? Like people are like,
Yeah.
oh, we brought him in for blocking, but people forget when he came out of college, he was a receiving tight end. And so just top to bottom with receiving weapons, it's a great group, and I'm excited for this group. It's hard for me to contain myself because I think fans love watching offense a little bit more than defense at times. And when you have all those weapons and you see them on display, it just gets you excited and ready for week one. I'm kind of done with the joint practices at this point.
It is so funny because I have been so busy this week putting together the fall preview, which those folks in Brookings listening to me, you can check out that preview at thebrookingsregister.com. Cheap plug. But I've just been like trying to follow practice. I've been at SDU practice. I've been all over the place. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm like Allen Iverson at this point. I'm like, we talk about practice. Like, let's start the games. Let's get going. Like, I know Madden probably sucks. I just want to buy Madden so I play a game that matters. You know what I mean? I'm going to throw some cold water on you a little bit because I know I am excited about the offense. I think that's going to be the strengths of this Vikings team, but I have two things that are going to mess everything up. One, the interior of the offensive line. And you agree with me here because I will quote a tweet you sent out last night, or X or post, whatever the hell it's called now. R.I.P. Kirk. And it was a response to Garrett Bradbury getting tossed around like Brock Lesnar fighting a cruiserweight by something called Tyre Tart. Now, aside from that video, which you can go and find, I mean, Tart just explodes off the line and chucks Garrett Bradbury about 5 yards to the left. Just like, excuse me, sir. No 295-pound man should ever be thrown like that, by the way. But Tart was also ejected later in practice for throwing a punch at Garrett Bradbury after he pile drove him into the ground on a running blocking play. We've seen Ed Ingram look not so great with the twos in Seattle. Dalton Reisner, I assume he's like Willie Mays Hayes at this point, like sleeping on a cot outside of TCO Performance Center. Like they're just going to be doing individual drills, and like Dalton Reisner, like, oh shit, I got cut already, and like run out of the field and just blow up a linebacker or something. You know, how concerned are you with the interior of the offensive line? Because after watching quarterback and Kirk Cousins looking like, you know, fighting Triple H in a street fight with his ribs, like, how are we feeling right now? Because I'm not feeling good.
Yeah, and I think that's justified. I would say I was probably just fueling the fire with that Garrett Bradbury post yesterday. I would say that, and I think most people would say that one-on-one reps are probably not very indicative of overall success. And Garrett Bradbury had a good year last year, and from what I've heard, he's had a good camp too. So like the fact that this one clip kind of came out and blew up, it's funny, but Garrett Bradbury is not the one I'm concerned about. I am a little concerned about Ed Ingram, but I'm curious how the Vikings are going to approach this, because we continue to hear the term competitive rebuild from Kwesi, from Kevin O'Connell, from, you know, media, whatever. And the competitive rebuild would suggest that like you're kind of putting all your eggs in this basket this year, and so maybe you would go get Dalton Reisner. But with so many like impending free agents, and not just like depth guys, but starters heading into next year, in knowing what the cap situation is, I almost wonder if they're just content rolling with what the roster is so that they can kind of roll over that money into next year, have a little bit extra to kind of retain some of those guys who are going to be free agents. But I mean, yeah, I think there's cause for concern across the offensive line. I mean, we still haven't seen Brian O'Neill practice, and you know, I know he's taken some part in you know, team drills on the side, but not like full on practice. So that's still got to be a concern with, you know, only 3.5 weeks to go to the regular season. So I am concerned, but at the same time, this is going to be the first year that I can remember where it's going to be the same 5 starting offensive linemen out there. And so that continuity and communication amongst that group, I think, will go a long way. But everything is warranted until we see them play a game. So I'm with you there.
I think, and you were kind of talking about the flexibility and how, you know, there's a lot of impending free agents. Ezra Cleveland, a free agent. There's a lot of talk out there. He wants to go back to tackle, which makes sense because you play tackle in college and tackles get paid more. You got Garrett Bradbury. He signed a 3-year contract, but if you go on over the cap, you'll see there's a lot of funny money in the last 2 years of that contract. And the Vikings, if he sucks, they can just go, all right, see ya. And then Ed Ingram as well. He's got 2 more years of team control, but if he has another bad year like he did last year, the Vikings are probably going to look to replace him. That's where that cap savings kind of comes into play with that 2024 class where, okay, we need a guard. We need to stop messing around. We can go get one. They didn't have that cap flexibility this year because they were kind of in transition. And that's how I feel about this whole team in general. Like, odds are this team probably isn't winning a Super Bowl. Like, if we took out the purple Kool-Aid and like injected people with truth serum, they'd be like, yeah, they're probably a 9 or 10 win team. I mean, last year was kind of a fluke. Maybe they'd say they were fraudulent. I don't know. Or as some people would put it, fraudulenta. Like it's just like a series of punches to the gut or something. I just feel like this team doesn't have a lot of depth outside of the receiver position, maybe some other parts, but I think that if the Vikings fall into a situation where the offensive line maybe doesn't work too well, maybe Cousins has a regression compared to last season, and the other thing, injuries. I think injuries and health are going to play a key role in how good the Vikings are this year, and they are starting to pile up. Mekhi Blackmon left Thursday's practice with a shoulder injury. That's not great. Jordan Addison is in concussion protocol. Not good. And then you also have Kene Nwangwu and Jalen Naylor, who have yet to practice since the opening week of training camp due to injuries. We already talked about the receiving depth, the running back depth, and what is in that backfield. Ty Chandler looked good against third stringers. He also looked good against third stringers and second stringers last preseason. And then he didn't do anything in the regular season. Let me put it this way. If the Vikings were to make one signing to bolster depth, let's just assume they get the Hawkinson thing done eventually. You have your choice of signing a veteran running back, a veteran cornerback like Ronald Darby, or a veteran guard. Who are you signing and why?
I think I'm going cornerback. And the reason I say that is because I think there's much more unproven potential in the cornerback room. But in addition to them just being young guys, their injury history has been suspect. I mean, Caleb Evans, even in yesterday's practice, Caleb Evans was taken out. Now, he didn't get a concussion, but that's how nervous they are kind of about their cornerbacks from the 2022 class. Mekhi Blackmon unfortunately got hurt, which it sounds like he avoided a major injury, so that's good. But I just still think from a veteran presence and just someone who is reliable, I would like to see them maybe go target a cornerback. I think I listed a couple yesterday, but Logan Ryan was one that I think could be a good addition. Knows Flores, so that would be an easy connection to make. But I just don't know if you can go into the season at this point, especially with injuries starting to pile up in that room, without more depth there. I mean, we're kind of missing that Patrick Peterson, that Terrence Newman, that guy, he's probably lost a little bit, but you can throw him in. He can teach the young guys. He can do what you need him to do. Running back doesn't scare me, and the reason why is because I think historically we've seen in the NFL, you can kind of plug and play him at this point. And I think that was a big reason to move on from Cook, right? I think they like Cook as a player and a person, but for what he was going to cost this team, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi have come from places where they've really used running backs by committee. And so if they really think that, Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride, and Alexander Madison can do the trick, then who are we to say they're wrong? And then guard, that's just tough. I don't know if Dalton Reisner is really he'd be an upgrade, I think, but I just don't know if it's worth the money to kind of go after something like that. But who knows? We could be all wrong.
Yeah. And Reisner has been a starter all this time. The two concerns I have with him is he's been a free agent. He's been out there the entire offseason. So anybody could have called him and be like, we need guard help. Let's go get him. Yeah. Why is he still out there? It's kind of, windy type thing. You got the windy fingers or whatever. You're just like, Why would they do that? Why would nobody sign him?
Yep.
Little bit of a red flag there. He's also a starter. If you're bringing him in, I don't feel like you're putting him in a reserve role and like just going to Ed Ingram being like, hey, dude, we're going to put you on ice for a year. I don't think Ed Ingram would be really happy for that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I'll be honest here. I kind of want to see what Ed Ingram has. Like, even if it's bad, like at least you'll know after year 2, okay, we need to sign a guard in free agency with all this cap space. Or, wow, Ed Ingram really jumped from year 1 to year 2. Let's keep rolling with him. Like, I feel like you need to have answers on that 2022 draft class right now before, it's way too. I mean, Lewis Cine, we don't know what he is. Andrew Booth Jr., he's been off the field so much. I mean, he had an awesome pick in practice right now, but again, between the ears, right? He chucks the ball at the Titans, team, like tries to egg them into a fight.
I am so down for that though. I love that.
And I'm not gonna sit here and wag my finger at Andrew Booth like you shouldn't do that. Like, don't do it in a game. You do it in a game, like I'm gonna be upset with you. You do it in practice, it's like, okay, it's summer, different color jersey, it's like a bull seeing red or whatever. Like, I totally get it. But I mean, yeah, I saw that and I just kind of chuckled and I'm like, yeah, the coaches probably didn't like that very much.
Yeah, the coaches didn't. The players were hyped up though. 2-minute drill, and he essentially clinched the game, right? So
I think, gosh, what season of Hard Knocks was it? And I think it was when they were with the Texans. They were with I don't think they've done a Washington one, but I think it was with the Texans, and DeAndre Hopkins and D'Angelo Hall were mouthing off to each other. And like at the end of the second day of practice, like somebody goes, we need to get the fuck out of Virginia.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, this is not going well. I think that's kind of the stuff we saw yesterday. The last thing that I'm going to say about the practices, and really we can tie this into Saturday's preseason preview. Brian Flores' defense, that is going to be fun to watch, unless this is like a whole, subterfuge, don't show anything in the preseason type of thing, and they're just going to drop into cover 2 again against the Buccaneers or something. We're going to blitz all the time. No, just kidding. We're just going to watch you kill us underneath. I think that, Brian Flores is bringing this attitude. They're going to give up big plays. That's going to happen. This isn't going to be a top 10 defense overnight. But I think this defense is going to give them a fighting chance and help the offense, stay on the field a little bit more. Maybe, kind of take a step forward. What are your expectations for Brian Flores' defense this season?
I just want our defense to be a tone setter. I mean, I do think they're going to probably let up a lot of yards. That's just the nature of being aggressive and blitzing sometimes. You're susceptible to a lot of those big plays, which I think I'm okay with. I just want to see us. There were many times last season where I felt like we just let teams walk down the field on us. And I just want this defense to have an attitude, and they seem to already. They seem to have an attitude about them. That's just like, no, we're going to come after you, and you may, torch us once, but we might, sack you however many times. I just want to see that aggressiveness this year. But we talked about this on our show yesterday, and just like, I think fans do need to temper their expectations a little bit, because I don't quite know if Flores is going to come in and change this from a, dead last ranked defense to like a top 15. I don't think that's going to happen. It could, but I don't think it's going to happen. People would have to step up that we just don't really know who that is right now, especially when you think about the defensive line and even the cornerback group is another one. But I do think that like top 20 is like a reasonable expectation, maybe like top 22-ish. And
the funny thing is, it doesn't sound like that's aiming the bar high, but it would be a huge jump from where they were last year.
Yeah. It's crazy, but they have a lot of speed now, which is good.
Yes. And that's something they need to correct. I mean, last year, I kind of wondered this with Ed Donatel too. I wonder if he wanted to kind of blitz and take more risks, but he just looked at his personnel and be like, this isn't going to end well if we start sending Eric Hendricks on a blitz, because They're old, they're slow, there's everything else. And I think Flores is a better fit towards what the Vikings want to do on defense, but
Absolutely.
we're going to see how that translates throughout the season. Before we close the book here, what are you looking for from the preseason game on Saturday? Because it used to be like we'd have this long laundry list and everything else, but now everything's hurt or everyone is hurt. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, okay, Skull. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go.
I really want to see that. I mean, we've talked about it a bunch during the show already, but I really want to see that 2022 class kind of show out, or at least show something. I need to see a lot from Andrew Booth on Saturday. I don't know if a Caleb Evans will play, and I don't really think I need to see a whole lot from him, but I'm also thinking Ed Ingram in that situation. And then really what I'm looking for is I want to see Jaron Hall again. So I was very quick to be like, Jaron Hall, you kind of sucked in your first preseason performance. But then I went back and I watched the tape, and he kind of stood no chance. So when his offensive line let him down, his receivers weren't getting separation, and when his receivers were getting separation, his offensive line let him down. So I think he did a lot of like things that were smart within that, like throwing the ball away or you know kind of moving the pocket at will. But I just want to kind of see him even with the twos if they'd play him. I don't think they will play him with the twos, but I would love to see him just with a little bit more competency surrounding him and see how he performs. And then, I mean, the other thing is just no injuries, please. I don't want to see any more injuries.
The more injuries they have, the potential of this team tends to go down. I do like Jaron Hall. I mean, it's basically kind of what we talked about. Like, I want to see the cornerback depth. Can somebody step
Yes.
up with that opportunity? I want to see the offensive line. Does the second string offensive line have some form of resistance? I'm not even asking for a good blocking job. I'm like, just slow the guy down. So like,
Yep.
Jaron Hall isn't on his back immediately. The running backs, I want to see Dwayne McBride again, because I thought
Yes.
week 1 was kind of a disaster. He hasn't been great in practice from what I've heard. Can he kind of take a step forward and kind of learn like that? That's what we're looking for there. And then Jaron Hall, like you said, I mean, it's more curiosity than anything. I don't
Yeah.
think he'll ever be like a future franchise quarterback or something. But what you're doing there is you're just crossing your fingers and you hope you get a cheap backup with some upside where,
Yep.
If Kirk Cousins does go down, you're not going like, oh shit, we have to play Sean Mannion. This isn't good. And game's pretty much over before it starts. So
Yeah.
those are the things I'm looking for from Saturday's preseason game. One thing that we won't have to watch is a kicking battle because Greg Joseph is the winner.
Yes.
The Vikings released Jack Podlesny on Thursday. Podlesny never got off the ground in this fight.
No.
Joseph attempted every kick in Seattle. You didn't really hear too much about him. So it's good luck, kid. Hopefully you can sign on with another team. Joseph, of course, has been the starter for the last 2 seasons with the Vikings. He is 59 for 71, 83% on field goal attempts, 88.7% conversion rate on extra points. But those numbers dropped to 78% on field goals and 87% on extra points last season. Are we comfortable with Greg Joseph as the kicker?
I am. I mean, I think when you look across the landscape of the NFL, there's really only a handful of like good kickers, and unfortunately, we had one and decided to let him go. But that's a whole different story. But I'm comfortable with Greg Joseph, and I think there's a few different reasons why. The main one though is, and you brought it up even in our show notes here, but the main one is just the continuity with that group. We had Ryan Longwell on our show last season, and we talked about kind of Joseph's kicking woes. Obviously, he was great beyond 50 yards, but he was really missing the short intermediate stuff. And we asked him point blank, like, how do you even fix that kind of stuff? And he said it's really ensuring that it's just the same group of guys, and they're all kind of in sync. Because the second you swap out a long snapper or swap out a holder or swap out a kicker, the whole process gets turned upside down. And so I just think that bringing everybody back with Joseph, with DePaula, with Ryan Wright. I think all three of those guys can sort of build on last year. And Greg Joseph is a top 15 kicker in the NFL. Like he's still good. Let's just hope he doesn't lose us any games.
Yeah, that's the when your kicker screws up, you just don't want it to be in a key moment. And for Greg Joseph, I don't think, like, I can't remember where it's been like, the Arizona game. That's been basically it, right? And I mean, even then it was kind of like there was this tension when that happened because Mike Zimmer was standing on the sideline with a shotgun, figuratively, of course. Just like, I don't know, I'm going to bring in 6 different kickers and we're going to try this out. Yeah, I think that continuity has something to do with this because if you have all 3 guys, they work, they know their tendencies and everything else. Even last year, you had Ryan Wright as the holder on field goal attempts, and maybe that was a bit of an acclimation period. We're always going to be leery about kickers as Vikings fans because it's just like drilled into our blood. Like I've mentioned it on the show. I was at the wide left game when Blair Walsh missed a 27-yard field goal, and it was like, Saving Private Ryan or something when they're storming the beach and like you just hear like the tinnitus, like that really ringing in your ear and you can't hear anything else. That's basically what it was. Like we just have PTSD when it comes to kickers in Minnesota. And those misses that Joseph had. And I think too, like sometimes extra points can tend to be overblown when they miss it because it's a 1-point thing. Yeah, it's a huge deal. But I mean, I would rather have, if Greg Joseph's going to be shaky on one area, I'd rather have it be extra points than field goals because you'll need, you never know. You might need, what was it? A 64-yard field goal he hit against the Giants on Christmas Eve. Like, if he can do that, if he can come through in clutch situations, that's really what you want from your kicker. So he does bring frustration sometimes, but I don't think this is like a, burn houses down type of thing that Greg Joseph won this. No. I think the Vikings will be just fine at kicker until they're not, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's just always going to kind of be that thing associated with Vikings football, right?
Right. Yeah. It's ingrained in our blood just as much as Fran Tarkenton and Randy Moss. So
even if we got like a Justin Tucker, though, I feel like he would suck when he came here.
Well, we had one. Yeah. We had Daniel Carlson, and then, Zimmer basically broke him by, you missed one in the preseason, kid.
I can't believe that.
From the guy who once sacrificed Irv Smith Jr.'s knee for a preseason touchdown that he didn't get. But that's another story. Let's wrap things up by talking about, how do I put this? Our idiot of the week. Ryan Clark, who is a former Steelers safety, was on NFL Live. And, they, just like us, they got a couple of weeks until they start talking about the season. He said that George Pickens is more talented than Justin Jefferson. Now, I'm going to read the complete quote, and then we can kind of go over what's going on here. Ryan Clark said, George Pickens is much more talented than Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson understands everything about playing the position. Stems, leverage. He can catch the ball in all kinds of awkward positions. He's a savant. But here's the other thing. Coach Mike Tomlin told me something that I thought was great. He said they didn't even work to tolerate him, and they certainly didn't try to raise him at Georgia. They didn't embrace who George Pickens is. When you've got 5-star players everywhere, it doesn't matter because you can run the ball for 250 yards a game. But now at Pittsburgh, and talking to Ike Taylor about the way the entire team loves his attitude and loves the way he approaches his job, that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers have done for him. Okay. So I think there's some merit to what Clark is saying as far as Pickens' time at Georgia. Maybe he's an unfinished product, that sort of thing. But when he talks about like running stems and knowing how to catch and whatever, is that not receiver talent? Because it certainly seems like that's part of, because like Laquan Treadwell, he could run an 8 route or whatever the hell it was in Norv Turner's offense, but he couldn't run a normal route to save his, like a Cordero Patterson, maybe more talented, right? But
sure.
you ask him to run a receiver route and he's completely useless. Like, make this make sense, because I'm having a hard time here.
It's that time of year where people are just, I mean, what did we see the other week that Kirk Cousins made Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, I was going to get to that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
we've heard Justin Jefferson is a product of Kevin O'Connell's system and Kirk Cousins. We've heard that Justin Jefferson has less upside than Christian Watson. And we've also heard that he's less talented than George Pickens now. So Justin Jefferson apparently sucks.
It's just that time of year to spew out just dumb takes and rile the people up. But Ryan Clark is so off base with this comparison. Like, if you would have tried to tell me that like Jamar Chase is more talented than Justin Jefferson, you maybe could have sold me on something like that. But what Justin Jefferson has done in the league in the last 2 years, hold on one second.
The beauty of live YouTube.
What Justin Jefferson has been able to do in his first 3 seasons here is nothing short of remarkable. I mean, he's about to break Odell Beckham Jr.'s record of 5,000 yards through 50 games or something like that. I mean, he's super close. And what did George Pickens have last year? Like 800 yards total.
Let me look that up here.
It's just, in George Pickens, yes, he's young.
801 yards.
Yeah. Get out of here. Jefferson's almost had 5,000 in 3 seasons. So that's like 4 times more. It was way more than that. But I just think that you can hype your players up, but bringing Justin Jefferson into that and pulling him down, it just makes no sense, because Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the NFL. And George Pickens may have a great career in the NFL, but I mean, I feel comfortable saying he's nowhere near Justin Jefferson's level of talent. It's just, yeah. I'm still kind of baffled that and then he doubled down on it the other day, didn't he?
Yeah, here's the tweet. He sent this out last night, I believe, and he said, "Dear people who are upset that I said George Pickens is more talented than Justin Jefferson," which is solid Stan vibes, by the way. Then the Eminem. Personally, I don't stan anyone because I know how that song ends, but
yeah,
that's kind of neither here or there. "You are behaving as if I said he was better." He went on to say that Aaron Rodgers is more talented than Tom Brady, but Brady is the greatest to play the position. That was his stance. And this is the other thing too. Patrick Peterson defended Clark on Thursday because he had his usual press conference.
I didn't see this.
Said, "I can definitely see it. GP is very, very raw. He's very unpredictable when the ball is coming his way in terms of catching ability. On my podcast, All Things Covered," cheap plug, "the other day, I called his hands magnets because if the ball is coming near them, he finds a way to come down with a catch. Justin is a savant to the position. He's really, really tuned into how to manipulate the defensive back and sets his routes up. He's going into year 4. GP is going into year 2. There's still some things he wants to get better at." Now, as I mentioned, Patrick Peterson is campaigning for a career in media. So therefore, he is not going to come out and be like, "Ryan Clark sucks. He's high as hell. I don't know what's going on here," because he could very well have to sit next to Ryan Clark at a desk sometime next season. That being said, I mean, I see what they're saying where, George Pickens isn't a finished product and Justin Jefferson is a finished product. But even if we go back to LSU days, where Justin Jefferson was putting up insane numbers, and I believe, who was the coordinator? Joe Brady, right? That was his name.
Yeah.
Joe Brady said he was in the slot because that's where our best receiver runs. And that was an offense with Jamar Chase. So I mean, there's proof that Jefferson, if you go back and look at his, workout stats, he's more effective there. And even okay, Georgia didn't cultivate George Pickens. They didn't throw it as much as they should have. Well, at the same time, George Pickens probably should have produced as he was going along, right? If he had the same talent level, he should have been putting up Justin Jefferson numbers in college. He did not. Georgia was still a very good team. And George Pickens also had character issues coming out of college. It might not be all on the coaching staff, in other words. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think we're hearing these things because Justin Jefferson has become the gold standard of what a
Mhm.
receiver can be in the NFL. He's an elite
Yeah.
route runner. He can go deep. He can catch it over the middle. Like he's virtually unstoppable as a receiver because he's going to get 100 yards. Most games, he'll probably get a touchdown too. Like he is the most consistent entity we have seen in the NFL since Jerry Rice, really. And I think when you're that guy, everybody's going to look up to you and try and compare. And especially as fans, we're going to look at our own guys and be like, no, I see a lot of Justin Jefferson and Christian Watson. And it's just to hype ourselves up of what they could be, even though there's no way they can even get close to that. So I think that's what's going on here. People are looking at Justin Jefferson and being like, okay, how can I hype up my guy? Oh, yeah, he's got some Justin Jefferson to his game because it's the ultimate compliment.
Yeah, and I think saying things like that is okay. Like, you can say, like, George Pickens is heading into year 2, he's trying to, continue to build his, you know, to his repertoire here, but just to say that just point blank that he's much more talented than Justin Jefferson,
And
it
double
just
down on it.
yeah, and double down on it, and so and then what he said about the Rodgers Brady thing, like, that's so that's such a different comparison because both of those are surefire Hall of Famers, um, and yeah, it's just dumb, and if you wanna compare George Pickens to Justin Jefferson, you can say that, again, he's a young receiver going into year 2, and he has potential to, keep getting better and potentially get up to that Justin Jefferson level, but, like, even still, we haven't seen it yet, so I just think it's just it comes out of nowhere. I when I saw it, I was just baffled.
Eh, I mean, I think sometimes too, I probably had somebody could probably go back in time and find some insane take that I've spouted on this
Oh, sh
podcast and be like,
yeah.
what the hell is this? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. I blacked out. For Ryan Clark, he blacked and yellowed out, apparently.
The thing is, though, like, I mean, we both kinda do this and, like, have takes and do shows, and when you're doing it, before you say something that you know is likely going to be a little bit, like, outlandish, there's always that pause of, like,
There's the security guard. You can't go past this line, sir.
yeah, and it's like, "Should I say this?" And if I say it, I'll say it with, like, a caveat, like, "I think Alexander Mattison" oh, should I say this? Yeah, I think he can rush for 1,500 yards or something like that, or, like, be a top 10 running back. Something along those lines, like, we always kinda stop and preface. Ryan Clark was like, "No." He's like, "This is my take, and I'm diving into it." And
Full
he did.
send.
Yeah,
Full
and
send, as the kids say.
he died on that hill, but you know what? If we know Justin Jefferson, that's just motivation. I mean,
Yeah.
he knows he's the best, and that's why he's out there practicing still, even though he should be the highest paid receiver in football. And I just think it's funny how I don't wanna say how little effort he puts into, like, his practice reps because he's definitely trying, but it's
Mhm.
just so easy and natural for him. Like, the rep we saw the other day where he just, like, runs under the I don't even know what that piece of equipment's called, and just one-handed catch. Meanwhile, you got guys like Jalen Reagor out there who are, like, not even doing the practice rep correctly, and it's so funny to just kinda watch him and how easy everything is for him.
It's like the old John Randall video. I don't know if you remember that, but he's doing the tackling done, and they show him
Yeah.
just going full speed, full bore. And the guy behind him is just like, all right, here we go. Another rep
Yep.
of practice. And John Randall's like, when's the next one? When's the next one?
Yeah. That's what
Basically,
separates good from great, man.
yeah, absolutely. Let's close with this point. What are your expectations for the Vikings overall this season? You liking how they look, or what are you thinking heading into 2023?
Yeah, I think it'll all rest on the defense, as we head into 2023, but I don't think I know we hear that Detroit is the favorite or even Chicago or Green Bay could make some noise. This team won 13 games last year, and while the way they won them is probably not sustainable, I still think they're a good football team, and I still think they have an opportunity to take the North and potentially make some noise in the playoffs if they, depending on who they match up against. But it is a hard schedule. I mean, we're going against first place teams. We have to take on teams like the Chiefs. Granted, that's here at home, but still going to be a tough test. So I think this team will need to really rely on Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, he played great last year. Maybe not statistically speaking, but I think there's some things that aren't necessarily in the stat book that popped out to me. And I think if he can build on that, and we can make sure that our offensive weapons stay healthy, and Jordan Addison ascends like we kind of think he is, I really think this team could be looking at a 10-11 win season, and another playoff berth. The good thing for the Vikings, though, or at least for Kwesi, is if things don't pan out this year, no harm, no foul, right? Their draft pick is in a spot where you can likely go get a future franchise quarterback. You can kind of reset in 2024, and then you have all your core pieces still heading into 2025. So I think this is really a win-win type of season for at least KOC and Kwesi.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I don't think there's, I mean, what Viking season isn't, right? But
Yeah,
I mean, if they're good, they're good. If they're bad, all right, go get your quarterback. Like they're not winding up with Caleb Williams, but I mean, Drake May, maybe you get Quinn Ewers. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Bo
There's
Nix,
some
I saw Bo
options.
Nix bopping around here on the timeline the other day.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that Gopher game from a couple years ago is still burned into my brain when it comes to Bo Nix, but they will have options. What's going on with Climb the Pocket, the Vikings Wire, and the Daily Norseman?
Yeah, so I should actually probably remove the Vikings Wire from my thing. I stepped away from that gig back in March, but I just have not updated anything on social media for that. But Climbing the Pocket, a lot of fun stuff heading up into this year. We're kind of setting our content schedule up, but Vikings Happy Hour is a mainstay, and you can see us there. We're going to do live shows every Tuesday night with the fans, so join us there. There'll be some post-game shows and whatnot, and then get back into a little bit of writing with Daily Norseman as the season kind of progresses. So it should be a fun season. I'm excited for it.
And you got it up on the screen here for the YouTube audience, but for the audio audience, where can they follow you on Twitter, X, Instagram, Whoop, Threads? I don't even know. I'm old. I've lost track of everything, but
I think I have it the same on everything, thankfully. So just a blanket Matt Anderson _8, and you can likely find me. Probably even on LinkedIn, to be honest. I guess that's not usernames, but Threads, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Matt Anderson _8 is where you can find me.
It doesn't even say Matt Anderson on his business card. It just says Matt Anderson 8. Everybody's like, what am I going to do with this? This is weird. Well, Matt, thank you for coming on today.
Absolutely.
We appreciate the time. Once again, this is the Viking Age podcast, the official podcast of the VikingAge.com. We do this every Monday and Thursday, most of the time at 6:15 p.m. Central Time, but we're trying to get a little bit more consistent, so we'll figure things out. But no matter, you can always catch us on Apple and Spotify the very next day. But however you listen or watch, rate, comment, like it, subscribe so you never miss a new episode. For Matt Anderson, I am Chris Schad, and we'll talk to you next time on the Viking Age podcast.